Well, good evening, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be sharing in these times with you at West Kington. Tonight, on our journey through Holy Week, we come to that evening of Holy Thursday. And as the disciples gather with Jesus to celebrate their Last Supper together, I'd like to invite your attention, just for a couple of moments, to some verses in the Gospel of John, John's Gospel, chapter 13, and verses 3 to 5. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel round his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. The disciples were understandably shocked to see Jesus rising from the dinner table to do a job that a high-class slave would have rebelled against. And yet, there he was, the Son of God, kneeling in turn at the feet of each one of his disciples, tenderly, caringly washing their feet. And in our imaginations, let's go just for a moment this evening to that upper room in Jerusalem. Let us be part of that scene. Let us see Jesus kneeling before each one of us, taking your feet, taking my feet, feet that are often misshapen, smelly, dirty. And there he was, there he is, gently taking our feet and washing and drying them. With all that lay before him in the night and in the days ahead, Jesus felt it was important to do this action with his disciples, to teach them what their relationship should be to others, to model their relationship with others on his relationship to them. As he faced into trial and torture, betrayal and death, he left this model with his wandering disciples. And of course what he was doing was modelling what our relationship should be to other people, to friends, to families, to neighbours, to strangers, to refugees and criminals and those on the fringes of society, in spirit, as Jesus knelt before his disciples, as he touched and held their feet. We are expected to have that attitude to others as well. I want to share a little story with you. It's a true story, and it was recounted to me last year by an American farmer I hardly knew. The church he belonged to practices communal feet washing as part of their communion service. Many of the churches with a background in European Anabaptism continue this practice, particularly in America, though some do in Europe as well. Jesse looked at me and he said, "I just want to share something with you." I don't do an American accent very well, I'm sorry, so bear with me. But just imagine this farmer, probably in his 60s, chatting, talking from his heart. Jesse said, well, I'd never been what you might call a deeply religious, deeply committed man. When this incident happened, I was just a 19-year-old, raw-boned farm boy. I had been baptized, but I'd never had what you might call a real spiritual experience. And this evening I was at my first communion service, and I didn't know if I should be there at all, because I'd done quite a lot of living before I sought baptism. And all these thoughts came back to me. I felt overwhelmed by my unworthiness. I felt overwhelmed by my lack of commitment. And I sat thinking, should I run? But next thing I knew, one of the brethren was kneeling at my feet. And he took my feet so tenderly, and he started washing. It was almost like a caress. I remember as I looked down, all I could see was the top of his head. His fair hair was thinning along the top as he knelt over my feet, washing and drying them. And then something very, very strange happened. The scene seemed to change, and suddenly I was no longer looking down on a fair head. I was looking down on a full head of dark brown hair. And as I looked down at my feet, these dark brown, work-worn hands were holding my feet, tenderly washing and drying them. And then the man looked up, and I found myself looking deep into these dark brown eyes. They looked at me. They looked deep within me. They saw everything about me. My sin, my shame, my unworthiness. And then he smiled. Those eyes smiled as they met mine. His eyes lit up as he looked deep within my eyes. And I was embraced by that smile. Somehow, in some extraordinary way, I knew it was the Lord. I knew it was the Lord, kneeling on the board floor, washing my feet. I knew he accepted me. I knew I was truly loved. That moment changed my life. In that moment, I learned to love myself. And I'm still learning. I'm still working at loving others in the way that I know that I am loved. An amazing experience. It had happened 40 years ago. And yet, as we spoke, I knew for Jesse this was one of the most real experiences of his life. knowing, experiencing the touch of his Saviour, the acceptance of his Saviour, was the most important thing, the most life-changing thing that had ever happened to him. And it modelled how he wanted to live his life for the Lord. Because he was so loved and so accepted, he sought to live loving and accepting all those with whom he came in contact. Brother, sister, let me serve you. Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. And may the Lord be with each one of us as we continue through the events, through the journey of Good Friday to the glory of Easter Sunday.